Welcome to Metroid Theories, where I talk about the Metroid series. After the battle against Abarax, a wall is destroyed, revealing Psylocke accompanied by 2 Metroids and 4 space pirates. The space pirates and the Galactic Federation Marines open fire, while Samus and Psylocke face off. Psylocke fires at Samus, who dodges and retaliates with a charge beam. Psylocke strikes the artifact instead, triggering it to release a purple wave that strikes Samus, spreading throughout all of planet Danomar. Up to this point, it's unknown as to what happens next. I suspect that this wave granted Samus psychic powers, since she was exposed to it first, and because she's knocked back by it. No one else demonstrates this when the wave comes into contact with them. It's currently unknown if anyone else receives psychic abilities, but what seems to be the consensus so far is that Danomar is the present-day version of Planet Vuros. If the 2 planets are one and the same, then one could expect anywhere from a decade to a century or more has passed. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond has been compared to previous Metroid games, including Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, and Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. Ever since the first trailer, many Metroid enthusiasts like myself have compared the portal near the end to be akin to the light and dark portals in Echoes. Instead of traversing between light and dark, Beyond seems to suggest that Samus will traverse between present and past. Although there are various possible concepts of time travel that could be used in Beyond, the Metroid series has been good at maintaining a straightforward timeline. This is what I think the team at Retro Studios might be aiming for. It's cleaner and easier to maintain. Let me introduce what happens if Retro Studios decides to approach time travel in the direction of the multiverse. Beyond would begin with the present, namely, 20x9. I will refer to this as the original timeline. After the artifact is triggered, it sends Samus and the others to the past. It could be decades or centuries, but I'll go with a century into the past. I will refer to this timeline as the alternate timeline. Next, let me present a brief timeline between Metroid Zero Mission and Beyond. Zero Mission starts with the cosmic year 2003. I will treat 2003 as the year that Samus is 3 years old, according to the Metroid magazine Z manga, also known as the Metroid manga. This means Samus would be born in the year 2000. Since the next date in Zero Mission is 20x5, I will treat this as the year 2025. If 20x5 is 2005, then Samus would only be 5 years old. If 20x5 is 2015, then Samus would be 15, which I also don't think would make sense. At age 15, Samus couldn't be considered the greatest of all the bounty hunters, let alone having successfully completed numerous missions that others had thought impossible. Such praise would only apply to someone who has established a reputation. For this reason, I think it's more reasonable for 20x5 to be 2025. Samus appears fairly young, after all. If 20x5 is 2025, then 20x9 is 2029, making Samus 29 years old. Now, suppose Samus is sent a century into the past on Vuros. Since she wouldn't have been born in the original timeline, she wouldn't have been on Vuros. This means that the past that Samus would be entering would be an alternate timeline under a multiverse view. And if Samus is in the past of the alternate timeline, then this past ends up being her present. What this means is that if Samus is in an alternate past, then her very existence is rewriting the future. Therefore, if Samus is to return to Danomar, it won't be the one she left. It'll be an entirely new one. Samus would no longer exist in the original timeline. If Retro Studios pursues this concept of time travel, this will result in multiple timelines, just as in the case of The Legend of Zelda. This concept of time travel doesn't seem to be popular among Metroid enthusiasts, so how would Retro Studios get around this while exploring time travel? Another approach would be what's known as the predestination paradox. An example of this is in both films, The Terminator, and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. In The Terminator, Sergeant Kyle Reese, a resistance soldier from TechCom, is sent back in time to the year 1984 to protect Sarah Connor, and to stop the T-800. While Sarah manages to destroy the T-800 in a factory by means of a 1,000-ton hydraulic press. In Judgment Day, it's revealed that the T-800's neural net CPU was salvaged. This salvaged microprocessor is researched and developed by Miles Bennett Dyson at Cyberdyne Systems. This allows for the potential production of more Terminators, which would lead to Judgment Day. Kyle would be born after this time and later leave his timeline to return to Los Angeles in 1984. If Retro Studios wants to maintain a linear Metroid timeline, then the kind of time travel that occurs in The Terminator, the predestination paradox, would make this possible. Everything that happens in this timeline must already be part of the original timeline. Samus's existence on Vuros, her actions, and her interactions with other entities, all lead back to 20x9. She's not changing history, She's a piece of the puzzle that shapes its course. Now, if this is a predestination paradox, does this mean that Samus's actions lack free will? Free will is a philosophical view that Beyond seems interested in exploring. During Beyond's Nintendo Treehouse, the opening of the game reveals, it is believed the space pirates are being controlled by Metroids that have the ability to fuse with other life forms and control their minds. Scanning Aberrax, the first boss, reveals this detail further. It says, Metroid fusion has resulted in a loss of free will and the formation of beam projection lenses on its chest. Now, it's unclear on whether or not Retro Studios is approaching free will in the libertarian sense or the compatibilist sense. If the direction is in the libertarian sense, then this could cause problems for a linear timeline. Libertarian free will means that an individual's choices aren't determined by prior causes or external constraints. Going back to the Terminator, suppose that the T-800 successfully terminated Sarah Connor. This would result in a different timeline, where John Connor would not be born, and therefore, wouldn't be able to become the leader of the resistance. Perhaps another individual would rise up as the leader, but it wouldn't be John Connor. In the same vein, if Samus is sent to the past, and she has libertarian free will, then this means that her actions are not predetermined by the timeline. She would be capable of acting in ways that could potentially alter the future while she's on Vuros. Doing this means a linear timeline is no longer maintained, but instead, the timeline would branch into an alternate one, resulting in multiple timelines. In order for the predestination paradox to work, everything, every choice, every event, must lead back to the original timeline in some form. The past, present, and future must remain consistent, regardless of anyone's actions. No matter what Samus, Sylux, or anyone does, everything must return to the original timeline, namely, the year 20x9. So, what about compatibilism? Under compatibilism, free will and determinism aren't mutually exclusive. Samus would be considered free in her choices, even if these choices are determined by prior causes, such as her upbringing and past experiences. Samus's choices wouldn't be independent of causation, but her ability to choose would be in accordance with her own desires, intentions, and reasons, even if these are shaped by her past. This approach would work best for the predestination paradox. It gives Samus free will, but it also means that her actions were always part of the events that would lead back to the original timeline. This would stand in stark contrast with organisms like Aberrax, Carvex, and other potential entities, since these fusion Metroids act as external constraints in exchange for enhanced abilities. Unlike Samus, these organisms would lose free will. Now, I can't say for certain that Beyond is going to be anything like the Terminator in terms of time travel. What I know is that when I first watched the second trailer, the device I saw Samus coming from reminded me of the time displacement equipment. The thing about these generators is that once someone is sent through one, he or she cannot return to his or her previous timeline. That is, unless there's another time displacement equipment. This is what I think might be occurring here. The dark room Samus is inside of reminds me of the time displacement chamber. It's not that Samus is acquiring the deep crimson and carbon black matte suit for the first time. Rather, she's returning to Tanimar or Vuros. So, I am led to believe that perhaps Retro Studios has taken inspiration from the Terminator and Judgment Day, two films that have a cultural significance in science fiction. Let me introduce a few details that lead me to believe that these films might have had some inspiration. First, the year in Beyond is 20x9. This is unusual, since Super Metroid's promotional preview states that the year is 20x7. If this is the case, then that would mean Metroid Samus Returns would also take place in the year 20x7. This is why 20x9 led many to believe that Beyond would take place after Super, although I originally thought it would take place after Metroid Other M. If I am correct that 20x9 is 2029, then this falls in line with Kyle, who is from the year 2029 AD before he was sent back 45 years into the past. What other science fiction series takes place in the year 2029, which involves time travel? The next detail involves the background in Beyond's official Japanese website. It could very well be a coincidence, but this building kind of reminds me of the Skynet hub, which houses the Skynet mainframe. Then there's the artifact. While it's often compared to a black hole by Metroid enthusiasts, perhaps this metallic object was also inspired by similar designs of the time displacement equipment. Of course, these are more ring-shaped. Next, consider the way in which Samus comes out of this device, briefly kneeling similarly to the way the T-800, the TX, and the Rev-9 appeared. This isn't observed with the T-1000, but he presumably was positioned this way as well. Whether Retro Studios chooses a clean, linear timeline like the Terminator films, or ends up creating a multiverse like The Legend of Zelda, Beyond won't simply be a game where Samus explores another alien planet. It'll be a game that explores the metaphysical nature of reality.